Hello and welcome everybody in this introductory course related to Flutter and getting started with Flutter. Flutter is an open source mobile application development framework created by Google. It's designed to help developers to build beautiful, fast, and high performance applications for any platform using single code base. When I say development framework, this means that Flutter is not a language, it's not a programming language. In fact, Dart is the language behind Flutter. So, Flutter is just a framework used to convert your Dart code into other languages. So instead of learning Java, Swift, C++, or JavaScript, you just need to learn Dart, and Flutter will convert your Dart code into these languages automatically and without any manual work from you, depending on the target platform that you need. In fact, Flutter can create stunning user interfaces with customizable widgets, animations, and effects. Those guys really built everything under the hood so that you can use it super easily without any effort. I think now let's get started and see how to start with Flutter. First of all, I'm going to go to docs.flutter.dev. So let me share this with you. Yeah. Now, after going to docs.flutter.dev, go and hit get started to install Flutter. Select the operating system which you want to use. For example, if you are working from macOS, click on macOS. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to go and choose Windows. Have a look on the system requirements, guys. Read this. It should be useful for you. Make sure that you have Git installed. PowerShell is already installed. Make sure that you meet the requirements. The next step is to get the Flutter SDK. It's pretty much straightforward. You just click on this blue button and download the zip file. And after downloading the zip file, extract it somewhere other than the C drive. So if you can see here, do not install Flutter in a directory like C that requires elevated privileges. Just keep it simple. Just extract it on any other drive. Alright? So after extracting it, it should be something like this. Like if we go and extract it, go search for the location that you extracted it, and you find a folder called Flutter inside it. And then this is the content of the zip file. Simply the source code of Flutter. So now what you need to do is you go to the bin directory here and then copy this because you want to add this to the environment variables. I assume you have an idea about what is the environment variables. They are just some environment variables that your Windows machine use. It could be different from Windows to Mac. We are going to explain this now also. But for Windows, just go to Start, Environment Variables, and then in the path variable for your account, for your user, just go to the path, edit, and then add a new entry for the bin directory of the Flutter. Why you do and then do this okay and this okay. Why you do this? Simply because, you know, if you have some experience with CMD, whenever you type here any command, you need this command to be defined in your path variable. For example, if you type Node, if you come from a Node language background, when you click Node version, now what is Node? How does the CMD know about Node? Simply go to the path and then search for the path for something called Node, and since it finds it, then it works properly. The same with Flutter. So installing or downloading Flutter is not enough. You need also to define it to the path environment variable to be able to find it when you type it in the command prompt, like Flutter version, something like this. It should respond with the corresponding Flutter version that you installed. If you open any command window, you have to close it and reopen it, just for the changes to take effect, because it needs to restart the path variable. So if you are opening something and then you did this environment thing, just close it and open it again. After updating your path, you should be able to execute the normal Flutter commands, like as we mentioned, the Flutter version, as well as Flutter, something called where Flutter. This is also showing the path of the bin directory of Flutter. And then another important command also called Flutter Doctor, which is very important to know what are the components that are installed on your machine related to Flutter development. When you hit Flutter Doctor, Flutter will start analyzing those SDKs slash components slash applications, IDEs, and it will give you like a report or a summary. So as you can see here, first thing is the Flutter, and this is a version of Flutter, and then something called Android Toolchain, Visual Studio, Android Studio. Anyways, this is not important now. Like if you do not see all these things checked on your side, that's fine. It's not a problem for now. We are going to handle this later on. The most important thing for now is to make sure that Flutter commands are running correctly on your machine. So if you can see here in the documentation, the next step is to set up Android. We are going to skip this for now. Why? Because it's not important to install Android for now. Maybe we can choose another simpler platform like web to get to know Flutter and to get introduced to the basics and the fundamentals of Flutter. So if we get back to this slide here again, like as we said, Flutter converts Dart into whatever language you choose based on the platform, right? So as we know, Android is definitely much more complex than web, for example, because web is just basic JavaScript application, while Android is definitely much more complex. So maybe for the fundamentals and for the very first tutorials, we are going to explain Dart with web instead of just jumping directly to the Android. Okay. So right now we will just do some simple commands. Just open the CMD and then maybe go to any of your preferable locations. I don't recommend you go to the desktop like this and create projects. Why? Because the desktop is on C, and usually the Flutter projects take some good amount of space. If you create couple or three applications, to be honest, it could take like up to maybe 700 megabytes or 800 megabytes. So it's not a good practice to put this on your C drive. And instead try to put it on your F drive or any other drive. So I'm going to use the command push D, which changes the directory and also pushes it if it's a different directory. So now I'm on the F directory. Then I'm going to go to one of my locations where I do my Flutter there, and then I'm going to create a new app. Let's say it's called my Flutter app, and then I'm going to go to this directory so that to make sure that I'm inside this directory, and I'm using one of the very first basic Flutter commands, which is Flutter create, and then I'm going to choose a name for my application. It's called, for example, my Flutter app. So this is how it works. It's a very basic command. Flutter create, and you give it the app of the application, and make sure to just use underscores, no spaces, no dots, no special characters. Just make it simple at the beginning. So now what Flutter is doing, it's just preparing the needed files for me, and preparing the folder with the typical folder structure. And by the way, it's not going to create an empty application. It's going to create a basic template application called the counter application. It's a typical application that's created by Flutter by default in all projects. So the next step here is to go inside this newly created folder called My Flutter app. Make sure that you do this step. Make sure that you are inside this newly created folder. And here we go. Now you can see the folder structure of the newly created application. We are going to definitely have a more detailed look on the folder structure, the folders out there, the function of each folder, the definition and the explanation for it. But for now, no need to just mind all these details. We are going to take it step by step. Maybe the first command that you can run now, because you actually created a new application now, as we mentioned. It's called the counter application. It's a very basic template application created by default by Flutter. So this application is ready now to be executed and run. But to be executed, if you get back to this slide again, it needs to be compiled or translated into one of the major platforms, right? Either Android, iOS, web, or desktop. So we need to choose web to, as we mentioned, for simplicity. This is the most simple application that you get from all these things, is to just create a basic JavaScript HTML application. So to do this, you need to run another command for Flutter. It's called Flutter run. So you just type Flutter run, and then without specifying anything, it will just ask you about the devices, which device exactly you want to choose. So it's saying that multiple devices found, because I'm using a Windows machine. So the first thing is a Windows machine, and then also there is a Chrome or Edge browser for supporting the web platform. So basically I'm going to choose 2, because 2 stands for Chrome here. It could be a different order on your side. You could also run it on Edge or Safari or Mozilla Firefox, or whatever browser chose on your side. But for me, the most preferable is Chrome, because the debugging service is definitely distinguished from other browsers. Now after you choose 2, you just, without entering anything or even pressing enter, it's already launching the, as you can see here, launching lib/main.dart, which is the first thing that you learn now, that whatever code you write will be inside the lib directory, or lib, short for library, and the file will be called main.dart. Now you can see Chrome open here, and with a very basic interface containing just a text in the middle of the page saying you have pushed the button this many times, with a very basic button here. When you click it, the counter is incremented by 1 each time you click on it, and when you click refresh, the app just goes back to the initial state again with 0, and you restart the process. So you can call this the very first application that you created. You see it's just 5 minutes, the whole process. You just created your first application. It's ready to be customized. But definitely before we jump into this, we need to understand everything about the Flutter application, because those are the basics, those are the fundamentals. If you understand every single detail about this application, you will be able to move faster in the next steps. So that's what we are going to do in the next video, is to understand the folder structure of the newly created application, um, analyze the files slash folders existing out there, take each file and explain it, what's its function, and what's the relation between this application and those files. Stay tuned for the next video. It will be definitely an interesting one. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you in the next video.